Hi Anshul.
Hi.
Welcome to the series on CSO leaders.
Thank you so much.
It's a great pleasure to have you with us.
It's an honor for me to be here.
Thank you. So Anshul, you founded what is now India's #1 youth portal with millions of readers every month, and I believe over 40,000 volunteer journalists across the
Yeah,
globe.
so 40,000 people who are using the platform, about 50,000 people who are using the platform.
Wow. So where did it all start? What was the inspiration of this?
I started when I strongly felt that I was much younger when I started. I was 17 when I started, and one of the burning thoughts in my head was that as a young person who's grown up with parents who've been really invested in the news. They, my parents were extremely invested in seeing what's happening. They were really interested in current affairs. Okay. So I grew up seeing all of that, but somewhere I couldn't find a connect with it. I felt that neither was my voice being represented, nor was the regular citizens' voice being represented. The media was largely levitating towards power centers, and people's voices were not being brought out. So it was that growing frustration that kind of led me to start Youth Ki Awaaz. But also a very important reason why I started Youth Ki Awaaz was because I felt that young people are at the center of any kind of social change that we want. Right. They're often told that they need to do something to change the world, but they severely lack platforms to do that. They're not involved in any kind of decision making. Even if you think of how the country's youth policy is formulated, not a large segment of diverse, well represented young people are a part of it. Okay. So that says something about how we treat young people as a society. So that frustration, kind of all of it together led me to want to do something about it. And that's how Youth Ki Awaaz got started. Initially as a personal blog where I used to write my own opinions and experiences, but very soon into a platform for anybody to kind of voice themselves.
Yeah. I just want to take you a few years back to your initial days, and I just wanted to get a sense that when you looked at setting up something like this, did you have some early supporters? Did you have some detractors? I mean, what was the process of setting them? Was it a challenge? Did it happen easily?
No, it definitely did not happen easily. I had several challenges. I was just in college when I kind of realized that I want to do this in a big way, full time, get more people involved, all of that. While in college, actually, I faced a lot of resistance, of course, from college professors to students also who did not believe in what I was doing, who thought that I was wasting my time, all of that. And college became a particularly tough time for me because I was really dedicated in pursuing Youth Ki Awaaz. One of the things that happened was that in 2010, Youth Ki Awaaz got an award by the UN. So that kind of got us recognized in many circles, and that gave me access to a lot of people who I didn't know existed before that, and who I didn't know were actually out there doing work in similar spaces globally, and people who I could look up to kind of talk to and learn from and just seek motivation from sometimes. And that played a very big role in helping find people. I remember when I was getting done with college, one of the biggest challenges in front of me was that everybody was saying that Youth Ki Awaaz is not sustainable, you're not getting any money out of it, so why waste your time? Just take up a job, save some money and get back to it later, or do your postgrad, at least you won't be wasting time, and so on. And I remember meeting somebody who had actually who was much older than I was, extremely successful in the digital empowerment space, and he told me that if you strongly believe in it, there is like that last mile that you have to conquer, where everybody says that drop it, but you have to stick to it. So if you really stick your neck out and do it, you're gonna make it. And I think that conversation, that moment really made a difference.
Within the development sector per se, there are people who kind of start in early, and then there are people who come with a certain level of professional experience.
Right.
So what's your feel? Do you think certain level of professional experience or background helps to kind of have a greater impact in the sector?
So I don't think that's a necessity. I don't think having a great professional background is a necessity to have an impact, because I've also met people who are today much younger than I am, and they're having a lot more impact as well. I feel obviously the intent matters, but more than anything, perseverance to kind of learn everything that you can and implement the best that you can matters a lot. So like one thing that I feel is that of course you can have years of experience, but you can also have those years of experience in 1 year. just based on your experiences, just based on how much you have to struggle and how much you have to kind of figure out, especially if you're trying to create an industry that does not exist out there. So I think it's not a critical aspect, but I do feel that once the organization grows up, once it kind of reaches a certain kind of scale, and it has to scale further, having professional experience does help. So I think they both go hand in hand. One is not necessary, for the other to kind of have an impact, but at some point to kind of scale it, sustain it, it's more important that everybody with different kind of experiences and backgrounds comes together and makes it happen.
Is working on in the area that you are and in the development sector, is it actually more about being a brave heart, or do you also need sharper minds to kind of make a difference?
Yeah, I think you need more of the sharper minds to make a difference, because I think just being a brave heart does not solve the problem. Just having passion isn't enough, because the challenges we are facing are such that you need to do a lot more. You need to be very strategic in your approach. You need to be really collaborative in your approach, and you need to know what are the steps that you need to kind of cross to have a much more longer term impact. So I think brave hearts alone can have a short term impact which might not sustain, and that's where I feel the passion needs to be fueled by a lot of thinking and a lot of planning as well.
The youth is too impatient these days to kind of stay with the area.
Right. So I feel definitely. I mean, I feel young people are impatient. I feel every generation has had this moment where where young people of that generation have been really impatient. They wanted change. They wanted things to get resolved faster, and that's a good thing and a bad thing. Good thing because some of those young people end up actually taking the step forward and doing something constructive, and they actually start figuring out what can they do, how can they contribute to a very constructive dialogue. But many times what it actually leads to is this idea that we as a generation need quick fix solutions, which ends up driving politicians or people in positions of power to offer quick fix solutions, which are not long term, which are not sustained and sustainable in any way possible. So I think it's good and bad. What we're seeing right now is definitely that it's not as good. Wanting quick fix solution is not a good idea, because change happens over a very, very long time. Yeah.
And Sen, tell me, when you're talking of change and happening over a longer period of time, so is it, how would you see, I mean, for a platform like yours, it is more about voicing opinions versus people kind of being on the ground and actually making it happen. So where do you see these two fitting, and do you see one more important than the other, or how do you?
So no, I don't think one is more important than the other. I think they both complement each other. I think it's important to go out and do something about the issues that you're facing, and it's also important to talk about it. So currently we are in English and Hindi as a web platform, but we're launching in 5 other languages next year. So that kind of all goes hand in hand.
Okay, so you preempted what I was going to check out. In fact, that was one of the things that I was looking at.
Right.
I mean, would you want people to have more expression in their own languages?
Yes.
So you're adding 5 more languages.
Yes.
Which are those languages?
So we are starting with Tamil, Telugu, Bengali, Gujarati and Marathi. So those are the 5 languages that we are looking at. Those are also the 5 languages that people who want regional language content on the internet, are kind of the highest in number on the internet. But what we realize is that people who specifically speak and read these languages also lack platforms to write in these languages and talk about these the issues that they are facing.
How do you sustain? What's the model that you work on? How are you sustaining the platform?
Right.
And I believe now you're looking at doing newer things also.
Right.
So how are you looking to?
Yeah, I don't want Youth Ki Awaaz to depend on people, because we might do work that might end up pissing people off. So we don't want to depend just on the goodness of people, and we want to really be independent and want to represent people's voice, even if people are angry, even if they're happy, and that's when the idea of a sustainable business model really came in. So if you see the website, you won't find any ads. So we're not doing the traditional way of sustaining ourselves. What we do is we tie up with high impact organizations like Facebook or the UN and several other organizations, and we run campaigns for them on the platform. So they essentially come on board to back the issues that we are talking about, and they help our community talk about those issues at scale. So Facebook, for example, is a constant partner with us who is really interested in talking about online safety, because that's something that they are concerned about, and that's something that's a growing concern, for organizations globally. And what we are doing is we are facilitating this conversation at scale with hundreds and thousands of young people, from across the country. So that became a really strong model to sustain ourselves.
What is it that you do to keep your people motivated, excited?
Yeah.
And
so a couple of things that I've done is one, I've made sure the decision making in Youth Ki Awaaz is as democratic as it can be, where the day-to-day work cannot be something that has a very top-down decision. So whatever we do here has more people involved in it, kind of expressing themselves and talking about how we need to build out the platform, than just me coming in and saying, okay, from tomorrow we're going to do this and that and all of that. So having a more democratic workplace has actually helped us have more ownership, from the people who actually work here. That's one. The other is that the people who actually work here have actually seen the impact of the work, and we make sure that it's visible to the team as well, not just to the world out there, and that plays a very big role in keeping them motivated.
So you've shared some of the great impact that has been achieved on the ground. Any other specific ones that you are especially proud of?
A journalist who had done this investigative story, from Nepal, could not get her story published in several media outlets because they didn't think it was important. So she published it on Youth Ki Awaaz. The story was about how young women from Nepal are trafficked to Bombay for their skin tissue for the illegal plastic surgery industry, and it was all because of the obsession with fair skin and all of that, and how it kind of runs $1 billion illegal industry in India. And what happens to the lives of those women after the tissue is extracted? They're left there. They're forced into sex work. Their lives just kind of completely take a turn after that, for the worse. When the story got published on Youth Ki Awaaz, we were obviously hoping for a lot of impact, and we did see it. It was read by more than 500,000 people in just a week. It got covered widely by the international media. So suddenly it became a big issue across the internet. Reuters wrote about it. Everybody talked about how the story broke out on Youth Ki Awaaz and so on. And the momentum was such that the Nepal government was forced to set up a probe into this and actually act on it. It's not like they did not know of it before, but it's just that this issue was now an international issue that people are talking about across the world, and that kind of forced them to do something about it, and they actually did. One of the biggest youth-led movements in the country around unfair rules on campuses, called Pinjra Tod, started because somebody decided to write a blog about this issue on Youth Ki Awaaz, and that's how the movement, that became a trigger for the movement to start, and it's one of the biggest student led movements across the country, in several campuses.
What would be your thoughts to the younger generation now coming in, whether in the platforms that you are built or in the development sector itself? Any thoughts that you want to share with them?
I would just say two things. One is that there are no quick fix solutions, so you really need to stick it out and persevere over a long period of time, and there is not going to be an easy way out from many challenges. So it's good to solve challenges for the long run than to just solve them in the short run. The other thing is that I really feel that more and more young entrepreneurs need to stay determined, and they need to be humble while they're doing that, because humility is also at the very core of humility and empathy. They both go kind of hand in hand. Without them, you'll end up building an enterprise, but you might not actually have an impact.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.